أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله سبحان الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله لقد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت عليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي فبض أمري إلى الله بصير بالعباد الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذي يذهب الله عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to our Quran session this week. Last week's session was quite profound for myself as well because of the studies we went into about the differentiation between Malik and Malik. And it created a place for us to investigate and discover the idea of free will and seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala moment to moment, and how that can create a difference in our life. And that is truly a difference that we understand, that is truly a difference that we absorb in order to create a difference in our lives in terms of how we plan on spending every moment. So the idea is that we want to do a conscious life. We want to do a life which is an awakened life, not a life that is happening by default, not something which is taking us with it without us having any say in it. And while the outer universe is going to function the way it will function, so for example, the flowers grow, the trees grow, the seasons change, the animals, they go about with their lives. And that's how the nature's flow is working. And for us, it looks like something completely ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and taking it, doing whatever has to be happening. The life of a human being per se looks like a conscious life. We feel like we're not part of exactly that natural habitat or the changes of the seasons, etc. But the mystics say that it is. And in true sense, a mystic will understand that really everything's going to happen the way it's going to happen. So if on the outside world, everything's going to happen the way it's going to happen, my free will really lies in not controlling the outer environment or the flow of events that eventually take place on the outside. But my participation in my life happens on an inner plane, on an inner dimension, where I can interact with what happens on the outside from a place of fear, from a place of disconnect to the source, or from a place of faith and a connection to the source. So Dr. Wayne Dyer says that we really don't have any free will on the outside world, but our true free will lies within the intentions we hold, within the connections we make in every moment to the source. And that is the power of intention. And so when we are going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take over my life in every moment, the Malik walks in to take control of the situation. I have this very old bookmark from Q Fatma with me, and I'll share it on the group. And it talks about certain steps we take to hand things over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, as worrywarts and the way the world works today, and how concerned we are with not only perfection in the outcomes of our activities, but also judging ourselves constantly in terms of how good we are by what we do and how much we accomplish and the perfection in what we accomplish, we're constantly gauging ourselves as worthy, as good enough. And in doing so, there's a lot of burden and stress on our shoulders all the time. And that's something we create for ourselves as the burden of performance. We have a certain checklist, certain expectations of ourselves, and we want to come up to those expectations to feel good about ourselves. Again, that's an intention. So we want to put some focus today on the inner world and sit with ourselves and reanalyze our intention and understanding what is my intention in doing what I'm doing, and to really go into that subtle analysis perhaps, or subtle awareness, I would say rather, to distinguish the acts I'm doing in order to feel perfect, in order to feel good, in order to feel I'm worthy, in order to feel I deserve. And then see, do I have any way of seeing what a higher intention would be? And what a higher intention does for us is that it takes away from us this stress, this burden. So let's look at a higher intention. We do talk about the higher intention being the intention of seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only, right? And when we are seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only, we then release ourselves from wanting anything else, even ourselves. So wanting perfection, wanting reputation, wanting worthiness from myself, again, becomes a separate intention from seeking God. Now, for example, as a mother, I feel I go through a state of constantly analyzing myself as, am I a good mother or not? And on a daily basis, making mistakes and not coming up to my own standards makes me feel bad about myself, which happens with majority of the mothers, and they feel like I'm such a bad mom. And that takes us into guilt trips and takes us into feeling low about our own selves, and we don't feel good about ourselves. And when we don't feel good about ourselves, we can't feel God. So let's take it into a reverse understanding, and we can say that I want to feel God, and to feel God I need to feel good, and to feel good I need to understand that everything is in Allah's hands. And a mystic teacher once spoke about this and said that it is very easy, if not too easy, well, it is easier when we try our best and we do the best we can do. And, we take all the right steps, we do things very well, even mindfully perhaps. And after doing all of those things, after taking all those steps, if we mess up, if we, muddle up, we didn't, do well in getting the results we wanted, we can go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, look, Allah, I tried my best, and now it was in your hands, so I submit and I surrender to the outcome, because that is what you wanted it to be, because I tried my best and it didn't work out. So I leave it to you and I accept it. But the difficult part is when you mess up, when you know that you've left the door open. These are the exact words of the teacher. You left the door open and the thieves came in, for example. And you have all the right to blame yourself and feel bad about yourself and say, I'm such a, wreck, I'm so reckless, I'm so careless. And you can shame yourself and you can blame yourself. In that moment, can you go back and realize the reality that all acts are Allah's acts, all actions are His? It's a very difficult but deep understanding of Tawheed, because in the end, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who doesn't even let a leaf fall, right? Not a leaf falls, but Allah knows it. So every single thing in every moment happens with His will. And the teacher said that, can you allow yourself to accept that even the act that you apparently messed up in has happened in Allah's will? And can you keep a good opinion and say, this happened for me to grow through it, this happened for me to learn from it, this happened in Allah's will, this happened because Allah intended it to happen. And now that it has happened, I learn from it and I grow from it, moving forward. So you see, the difference of moving forward in a situation like that is to completely associate all power to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is associating and aligning ourselves with a Tawhidi understanding of reality where nothing happens without Allah's will. So even when you make a mistake, even when you mess up and you know that you really messed up, you know that it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will in this. And the following moment entails good in this. It was part of God's plan. So the mystic says, that the teacher says that it's very difficult for you to accept your own mistake and then say, this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's action, it was in His will, and I learn and grow from it. And this is called having husn zan billah, having a good opinion of God. If we have a good opinion of God, we have to automatically have a good opinion of all the actions which are in His jurisdiction. And because all actions, all feelings, all emotions, all the strokes on the canvas of this reality are Allah's, we can do nothing but say subhanallah to it. And what do I mean by subhanallah? Seeing the perfection in it, seeing that there is good in it, and moving forward, only good can come out of this. So yesterday I was reminded of this beautifully because there is a girl, a friend, she's been really, really sick, and she would have severe headaches, and for years nobody could figure out or diagnose what was the cause of her headaches. And while we were working with her, and we were doing a lot of counseling and trying to get to the root of her sickness, a lot of trauma was there from her childhood, and there was a lot of counseling and releasing of all of that trauma. The pains wouldn't go away. However, this girl reminded me yesterday that I just remembered one thing through it all, that there is some good in this. And there were times that I heard her even speak in a suicidal way, like she was so tired of living with this severe headache that she would just sit and cry day and night, and she'd be like just filled with tears all the time. And she said that I remembered this, that in chaos there's a way out to order, and while we feel everything is falling apart, something is on its way, and we don't understand the way Allah works, but that pain was all about taking me to another level or another reality, or it was a way to a better future. So I just held on to that hope, and she called me yesterday after suffering for years, and I've been praying, and at times I would feel so much pain for her that I would struggle to even call her because I wouldn't have the courage to ask how she was doing. because I knew she would be in pain. And I felt this block of speaking to her because I couldn't see her in pain. And yesterday when she was talking to me, right at the end of the conversation, I found the courage to ask how she was doing. And she turned around and she said, I'm completely fine now. And it came as such a miracle to me. It came as such a relief to me. And I just felt these goosebumps. I just felt in awe of Allah's beauty. And I do realize that at times, certain messages just keep coming to me. They keep repeating themselves to me through different mediums, like I'll get the same message. And when she told me that she was all better and she was doing really well and things have really improved, and she's holding on to the idea that everything is looking like it's breaking apart because there has to be a breakthrough somewhere, I was just in awe. And that's what happens when we keep a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding that even when I mess up, even when things are looking bad, even when nothing is making sense, in the end, He's got our back. In the end, He's got our back. So as parents, sometimes when we mess up, in the very next moment, we have that opportunity, we have that option of saying that this moment came to humble me. This moment came to teach me something, and there is good in this, and there is a lesson in this. And going into a place of guilt and shame and blame is not going to get me anywhere. So, Oprah was talking to Eckhart Tolle in one of the book, the New Earth book interviews or the podcast they were doing. And they had a question, and I think I may have repeated this before, but it's so pertinent here. This guy called in asking a question, saying that you're telling me not to worry, and even squirrels collect acorns, and they worry for their future, and they collect acorns because they want to have sustenance. So, are you telling me that I should stop planning for the end of the month and not know where my risk is coming from and not know where I'm earning from and all of those things? Like, how does this work? So Eckhart said that there is misinformation in your question. You're telling me that the squirrels worry and they collect the acorns, but the truth is they only collect the acorns and they don't worry. So you have to do what you're doing, and you have to stay in a space of planning in doing life, but you can do all of that without the worry. So Maliki Yawmiddin comes as a breather, as a breath of relief, in saying that every single thing, your action and your emotion and the outcome of your action, everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you have to do what you have to do. And if you go about doing life, you don't have to do it with a worry attached to it. So you pay the bills and you earn and you plan for your future, but you don't worry for your future. You don't stress about it. You don't get anxious about what's going to happen. But easier said than done, we do worry and we do feel anxious and we do get caught up in our thoughts. So what is the next step? Is to bring this realization that I am feeling anxious, that I am feeling worried, that I don't know what's going to happen. And that will be the moment of awakening. To awaken to the idea that I am human and anxiety takes over me. So in this moment, I choose to hand it over to the Malik. So in this moment, that means it becomes a perpetual act of handing over from moment to moment to moment to moment. And that is why it becomes a zikr. That is why the repetition of handing over ourselves, our lives, our affairs, the outcomes of our affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that moment to moment returning to him becomes the dhikr, right? And that is why in every moment we go back to the Malik who is taking care of our affairs. Now, we also discussed last time La Ikraha Fiddin, connecting it to Maliki Yawmiddin. And we said that when we are talking about the Malik, he's giving us a choice of returning to him. He is not going to step in and say, I want to take over your affairs. But he's giving us that choice in every moment and saying, would you like to come back to me in this moment? So that choice is always there. And I had a beautiful moment with someone who called me this past 1 week. She's a mother and she was discussing about her daughter and saying, you know, my daughter is asking questions about why do we follow Islam and what's the proof that it's the best, and you know, is it really perfect, and how do I know it's perfect, and why can't we follow any other religion and all of that. And I was going back to like Rafuddin. And majority of the times when we talk to scholars about that, they'll say, well, you have freedom in choosing the religion, but you don't have the freedom within the religion. And you know, Islam is not like a buffet table where, you know, you pick and choose whatever you feel like doing. And the place I come from, and I may be completely wrong, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so outstandingly, remarkably, you know, awesome. He's so beyond words beautiful that the human being can just never escape being in admiration of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you're an atheist, whether you're an agnostic, whatever you are, whatever religion you belong to, the nature around us, the environment around us, the climate, the suspended earth in space, everything is so remarkable that whether we like it or we don't like it, his beauty surrounds us and fills us with awe. And that surrenders us. That beauty surrenders us. We fall on our knees and we just say, God, this is so beautiful. And that falling on our knees in awe of his beauty is us falling in love with the Creator, with the universe, whatever we want to call it. And when we fall in love, the story of a lover is always about doing whatever they do for their beloved out of an internal joy of surrendering. You want to surrender. It's not even a choice anymore when you fall in love. And that is like Rahafuddin. There is no force in religion, but there is surrender in religion from the heart when the heart surrenders in awe and love. And so when we do that, when we come to that place of surrendering, then there is only sincerity. When you're falling in love with your Creator, and no matter what label you give it, that falling in love cannot come from a place of bad intention. You see, that cannot come from a place of a made up idea of surrendering. And that cannot come from a place of you wanting something. Like, okay, I'll believe in God and in return I'll get something. I'll be a good person because I don't want karma to come and hit me, you know. You just fall in love, and when you fall in love with someone or with God, you just become selfless. It's a human condition of surrender. It goes beyond your control now. And all of us as human beings hold that place within us of sincerity. So I believe that the whole purpose of any religion coming to us was to polish that sincerity, to bring us to that truth of finding that sincere truth within ourselves, so that now whatever I do comes from a place of truth. It doesn't come from a place of faking anything. It comes from a place of true honesty in falling in love with God, and then surrendering, and then seeing the truth, and then wanting to do it out of your own desire. It gives you joy. And I was just saying that when you don't feel good, you're not feeling God, right? You disconnect from God. You don't feel worthy of God. So when you have that feeling of joy and beauty and love for God, for universe, for the beauty around you, you're automatically surrendering and going into the sajda. And then intention, therefore, in coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in coming to God, in surrendering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so pure. It's almost out of your control then, because you're coming from a place of sincerity. Then how can you say that, oh, there's a buffet and I want to pick and choose, and I'm going to follow certain rules in Islam because it's convenient for me to do life, or not? You can't, because you're coming from a place of sincerity, and you're coming from a place of falling in love to the extent where whatever you're going to do out of sheer love of the beloved. You want to be obedient, you want to surrender. And of course, things get a little messy when the rules of God, have come to us with so much human interference over hundreds of years, patriarchy, political and religious greed, not religious greed, but political and economical greed, and how it made its way into religion and all of that. But I want to bring your attention to one more idea that I learned, and that is that we come to a place in our journey with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where the journey moves away from being a horizontal journey to becoming a vertical journey. And so from looking at everyone around us and the people and the teachers and the dogma, the culture, what is good for your reputation, what is not, what people say, you just start to move away from a horizontal journey, which is a place of multiplicity. So horizon, right, is the word that is behind horizontal. And across the horizon, there are people and there is multiplicity. But as you go vertical, it's just you and a higher reality. And when you start doing life from a vertical place, then there is no multiplicity. There's only one point of focus, and which is God. And you start to take over the affairs of your life in a vertical way, but not a horizontal way. Even, Imam Ali alayhi salam in the Nahj al-Balagha says, he's quoting Hazrat Musa. And Hazrat Musa is begging for the salt in his bread. He's asking for the salt in his bread. He's saying, Allah, you love it when I even ask you for the salt in my bread. Saying that even for the tiniest things, if we can go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and let Him take care of our affairs. And the way to do that is you take your steps without the worry, and you let go of the outcome and have this 100% faith that biyadikal khair, everything in the hands of God is good, and everything is in the hands of God. So I recently had an incident where I felt like the whole situation was going into chaos. And there was a staff member who suddenly decided to leave work. And a lot of times, when somebody leaves work, they leave a lot of taking over for us to take care of. And it was just a very beautiful transition from one staff member leaving and another entering. And it reminded me of how, life works, that people die and babies are born. And there was this inspiration that I cannot stop anyone who is destined to leave. And I cannot I cannot stop anyone from coming who's destined to come, because it's in Allah's will. So what I can just do is I can just sit and watch and just do my part. So the only thing I did was I sent out a message asking if any staff was available to take over, and that was it. Of course, I made the phone call to the right person to take over the job. But the transition was so smooth. It literally looked like a higher hand had taken over the affairs and managing it. And it just happened so beautifully. It was just like a miracle in the works. And the new person who took over work as if they've been working for years, knew everything. And I'm just in awe, because I just had this inspiration, right? That whoever has to come will come, whoever has to go has to go. So what's the point of me worrying about it? My worry is not going to change anything. So coming back to what Eckhart was saying, we do what we do. We do it in that moment with this most sincere intention, aligning ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we don't have to worry, because in the end, it's really all in Allah's hands. And the only thing that we really have control over is that moment to moment, going back to the Malik and saying, Allah, I hand this over to you. I hand this over to you. And what that really does is it takes away our worry. It makes us feel like I don't need to worry, because my the big boss is here. Big brother is here. Whoever we rely on as our rock is here to take over the affairs, and all I need to do is do my part and then let it be. And in all of this, what we have to understand is that in trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the byproduct is that we start to trust ourselves. And what do we start to trust ourselves with? We start to trust ourselves with trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is where in Surah Fat, victory, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِي أَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ. So, وَالَّذِي أَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ, He is the one who descends sakina, tranquility, in the hearts of the believers. في قلوب المؤمنين, in the hearts of the believers. لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا, by increasing their faith with faith. So when you put your faith and you walk in faith, then Allah will give you the evidence that will increase your faith. So, somebody said that the interesting thing about life is that in school, you're first given the lesson and then you're tested. But in life, you're tested first and then you're given the lesson. And that's the thing with faith. You get faith when you put faith. And if you look at it, it's literally the metaphor of one foot after another. When you put one foot, the next foot follows. When you put faith, more faith comes. So in Surah Baqarah, the beginning of the Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this is for those who have belief in the unseen. And the reason we need these kind of reminders in a class like this, where I probably am repeating myself with everything you guys already know, the reason we need these reminders, and most for myself, is because we are living in a world which is so focused on reason and logic and the scientific, tangible, results in life, the rationality, that it is very, very difficult for us to go into that place of believing in the unseen a lot of the times. And why do I say that? Is because I was reading about Ulul Albab or Ahlul Albab, the people of the Lub, the people of the Karna. The Karna is the corn inside the husk. So the mystics, they say that there are the people of the Qishr or Kirsh, it's an Arabic word, sorry, I'm getting it wrong. So the husk or the peel on the outside, Rawan would know if you can correct me in the chat, Rawan. The Kirsh or the Qishr, I don't know, I'm not getting the word right, are the people of the husk. They're the people of the outer layers. Okay, they're the people of the peel. If you have an orange and there's a peel, they're the people of the peel, the people of the outer husk. They're the people of the shell. They suffice with the outer. But then there are the people of the lub, the people of the lubab, the people of the kernel of the kernel, who want to go deeper within, and they're interested in that which is the unseen. So there's the peel, which is the seen, but the fruit inside the peel is hidden, right? It's the unseen. And then there are the people who will suffice with the peel on the outside, but then there will be people who are interested in the unseen, the hidden fruit. And so the mystics say that the sweetness of the fruit cannot be compared to the peel. And that's what we're after. When we start to do life with this belief in the unseen, with this putting of the faith on faith, that then brings sakina into our hearts, we start to taste the sweetness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence in our life, moment to moment. And so, I want to also bring in the idea of something as a master, the masters of our faith. So the imams and the prophets, peace and blessings upon them. And we take them as our masters, as a representative of God on this earth. So they are the fingers that point to the moon. They are the ones who are directing us to the reality, to the haqq. And most of the time, a lot of us were conditioned. Khashra, thank you, fam. Yeah, the people of the Khashra. So moving on, thank you so much. So grateful for that. So the masters, the prophets and the imams, salam wa salat on them, they came to us as the fingers pointing to the moon, but a lot of us were conditioned, and a lot of us still under that conditioning, then we forget about the moon and we get focused on the finger, and we get focused on them as everything, and we forget about the purpose of them, and which is to take us to God. But there's a very important idea that I want to discuss here, which is the idea of Shifa'at. Okay, so if if the prophets came to us, the imams came to us, and they guided us, and then we say, well, they had this perfection given to them, which we call the Ismah, and that purified them and perfected them. And so they became infallible. And because of their infallibility now, that they're at a different level. And but then they can do shifa'at for us if we have this idea that if I mess up, which we do all the time, then they will do my shifa'at on the day of judgment and I'll be saved. So how do we understand this energetically is, number one, if Allah has predetermined the Ismah and the infallibility of certain individuals, then how would it be fair that I wasn't given that or you weren't given that? What was the criteria of God giving it to some people and not to some people? Because it doesn't fit his frame of being an adil. He's fair, he's just. So was he just handing it out and he gave it and then, that's it, certain people were lucky? These are genuine questions which our children ask and I ask. And so the idea is that if Allah was the kind of Malik who was just, controlling everything, he was not the kind of Malik we have understood him to be, but he was just that master or person who was just perpetually in control of everything and not giving the free will, then there would be no idea of adl. So number one, the way I understand infallibility is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is infinitely perfect. Anyone in comparison to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be perfect. In comparison to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one is perfect. Whether it was the Prophet, whether it was the Imams, in comparison to God. So ultimate perfection is only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In comparison to Allah's perfection, nobody's perfect. So for example, I'm of course not perfect, and while Allah is infinitely perfect, what I can say is that the Holy Prophet and the beautiful, lofty personalities who we're indebted to and eternally grateful for their presence in our lives and, for their services to humanity, in comparison to Allah's infinite beauty and perfection, which can be trillion, gazillion, multiplied by gazillion, forever. Perhaps we can choose and pick a number of, say, the perfection of a prophet touches number 1,000. Now, compared to that 1,000 level of perfection, you and I fall at number 1 or 2 or 10, I don't know, somewhere there. And so there are so many rungs on the ladder of perfection between me and these lofty personalities, but then an infinite journey ahead of those personalities in comparison to God's personality. And every moment becomes a teaching moment to perfect me and you, but also these lofty personalities. And I'm going into this another discussion where, for example, this life of 60, 70 years sets the trajectory of my soul. So these lofty personalities of the Imams and the Prophets, their personalities were in the trajectory of growth mindset. While they were, for example, they're because of their spiritual genetics, spiritual work, the promises they made with Allah in the Alastu and Alam-e-Dhar and all of that, they came into this world at a level of perfection already. And if they entered this world, for example, at 999, they left the world at 1,000, it's already a trajectory of growth. And so even beyond the realm of this material world, these personalities are in a state of growth. They're still moving towards perfection, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So while you and I may move from the rung on the ladder of perfection from 10 to 11 in our whole lives, they may be, growing at exponential speeds of going from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000. So they're already at a very high station compared to where we are, but they're nowhere near God's perfection. That's for sure. And that's why we see that every single entity, every single personality is in a state of perpetual motion, of perpetual growth. Because in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya ayyuhal insan innaka qadhan qadhan famulaki. So, insan, O human, you are in a state of perpetually striving towards me, meeting me. Allah is perfection, and we're constantly moving towards perfection. So, you and I are moving in our journey towards perfection, and they are moving in their journey to perfection. And while we are at a certain level of perfection, they are at a very high level of perfection. Saying, that all being said, what is Shifa'at? Shifa'at is to move ourselves out of this slumber where we may slow down our perpetual motion of growing in perfection and moving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and emulating this energy of these lofty personalities and bringing in that energy of growth within ourselves with working on our sincerity and purity of our intention. So if we can work on the purity of our intention, and if we can emulate this energy of growth and movement and motion, then we are putting ourselves in the same trajectory as the Imam. And it is this emulation of energy, of growth, of having a growth mindset, of constantly, breaking through our shells and veils and being ready to break open constantly and be ready to become nothing, to become something, and then to become nothing and to become something, to go into that journey of chaos and order and make and break and say, I want to grow, I want to keep going towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to break out of my darkness, come into light, and then get a vision of a higher darkness, and then break out of that darkness, and then move towards light. This perpetual infinite cycle of consciously growing is the energy of Shifa'at. This is the energy of the Vilayat of Imam Ali alayhi salam, the one who is nothing but humility, growth. And the epitome of this humility we see is in Dua Kumail. The words of Imam Ali in that dua, the humility we see, the way he's talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a beautiful picture of this embodiment of perfection, of human perfection that we see in Imam Ali. And he is humbling himself in front of the ultimate perfect Lord. That is the emulation of the energy of Imam Ali, and that is the energy that becomes my Shifa'at. That is going to save me. Why? So how do I understand that I'm going to be full of faults and I'm going to be full of mistakes, but the Shifa'at of the Imam will save me? Just look at it this way now. I'm full of faults, but I'm trying. I'm full of faults, but I'm struggling. I'm falling, but I haven't given up. I am a mess, but I'm still keeping hope in my Rabb. Now that is the hope that Imam Ali is saying, that how will I survive even in hell? If you put me into hell, how will I survive this separation from you? That is Shifa'at. If I can have that within me, then inshallah, on that day, when I am standing with really nothing in my hands, which is who we are, really nothing in our hands, with an absolutely empty bucket, and saying, God, I really have nothing to show because I'm nowhere near any perfection. I tried and I tried, but I kept falling. Allah will say, but you tried. And that is my trajectory. The idea that I kept on trying, the idea that I kept on saying that I don't want to give up, the idea that I'm a mess, but I'm going to keep trying, that is my Shifa'at. So, in physics, it really fascinated me when I finally figured it out. It's a very simple concept. One is speed. The other is the rate of acceleration. And whether I have a good speed or not, whether I was moving at a good speed or not in this dunya, as long as there was a rate of acceleration, that is my Shifa'at. As long as there was harkat, there was motion, there was movement, there was, in Urdu we say haath paun chalana. As long as I was striving and I was in a state of saying I'm not going to give up, that's going to be our Shifa'at. So To me, that is what makes sense in the world of Shifa'at and intercession and the perfection of the Ismah. And honestly, when I understood these ideas from my teacher, they clicked and they made sense of Allah's adl, of Allah's perfection, of the perfections of the Aimma. And it made sense of my journey in my life in terms of Allah's justice, in terms of where does my, my operation, my participation in this life lead to a fairness. And of course, we always tell Allah, do not judge me out of your adl, but judge me out of your fazl and karam, because I'm not worthy of your adl. So with that, I would like to end today's session. And I would like to make a dua. Oh Allah, we come to you as humble servants, struggling and striving, and confused and full of doubt. So, oh Allah, I take the words of Imam Zain al-Abidin that certainty is better than doubt. Oh Allah, bring certainty into our hearts. Bring yaqeen into our hearts. A yaqeen that infuses our souls and our hearts to a level that then nothing can take that away from us. That then no experience in life would take that yaqeen away from me. It becomes an intrinsic part of my soul. Oh Allah, you are the Malik and I'm the Abd. And I'm just in awe of everything that is so perfect in your world, to the extent that when you give us Surah Fatiha, you say Maliki Yawmiddin. And the next verse we're going to study next week is Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Oh Allah, there is no better prayer than that. You are the Malik and I'm the Abd who is in need of your guidance. And someone said something really beautiful, one of the teachers, that you are telling me that I am your Abd when I have done nothing to deserve to be your Abd at the moment. And yet you allow me to call your Abd. Oh Allah, I pray to you to make me your true Abd. Oh Allah, heal this world. Oh Allah, make us your vessels on this earth to bring healing to everyone who needs it. Oh Allah, enable us to fill us with your light, Ya Allah. Fill us with your light and let this light overflow into the world. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of your last Savior.